Hey everybody, it's Steve. Um, this is the same day, literally seconds after I made that first video, which I'm going to post that video, and then I'm going to probably post this video unless something catastrophic happens. But it was the first time I ever made a video that was actually 30 minutes, which I kind of feel is a real triumph. I feel like somebody who just made a breakthrough at a psychiatrist's office, and suddenly they know why they're whatever they are, you know. But anyway, so this channel is called Still Working It Out because I'm still working it out. 57 years old, born in 1968, and I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Yep. I'm probably not alone though. The more I talk to people my age, the more I find that. Hold on. I put a timer on this so it won't go over, so I won't go over a certain amount of time. But anyway, yeah, the more I talk to people my age, the more I find out that other people are experiencing similar things to what I'm experiencing. And which is basically, there was a time in my life when I was like, say, maybe 17, 18, 19. At some point, I believed that I had an idea. I didn't think I was ever going to make it to 50 for sure. Um, I went ahead and had a midlife crisis on purpose at 25. I thought that would be it, midlife. But I had an idea of where I'd be in my future one day. What level I would have gotten to. When you're playing a game and you reach these different levels, of hierarchy of a success or whatever. I really believed I was going to have this whole other life, and I would be at this whole other operating level. Um, I didn't think I was going to be rich. I'm not that dumb. But man, I thought I'd be smarter than I am, you know. But I mean, at the same time, gosh, you can't tell the future. That's clean. That's obvious. Anybody could have asked me that question back then, and I would have said, "Yeah, nobody can tell the future." But I can. I can guesstimate where I'll be. Stupid, dumb. I have one sibling, maybe two. I don't know. That pretty much did the exact thing that I think they thought they were always going to do. But I doubt even that person is now what they believed they would be. I have a hard time picturing, even though I may see the trajectory from what I saw from the outside, and I still see at the outside where it went, where it looked like it was going to go to where it did go. It's different when you're looking at yourself, at your own guesstimations of what you should, where you are, or where you thought you would be, and all that stuff. So this channel is basically designed for pretty much one thing, and that is your entertainment. Your entertainment. Why you would be entertained by me, I don't know. Some people may feel better about themselves after they watch me because they could say, he kind of sounds articulate, but at the same time, there's this whole dead fish thing going on. I'm better than that. And the reason I say that is because I get that haughty thought by seeing some of the people around, you know, that I thought they should be better off than me, or I thought I was worse off than everyone, and look at them. Clearly, I'm not. So, this is a chance for me to make you guys feel good, and I'm not putting on airs or any of that stuff or playing stupid. This is me. If I seem stupid, it's real. If I seem brilliant, it's real, I guess. But you need to know one thing I've learned fairly recently is that nobody is all one thing or another. Somebody can be brilliant in 1 minute and be an absolute neck breather in the next. it's just hard to. I mean, you know, one cup of coffee wakes the brain up a little bit. Uh, Too many carbs makes the brain go, you know, and hard to say, you know, hard to say. But we can be pals. We can be pals. I just don't know about you. You know what you could do though is comment, and then I will know about you. There could be lots of people that I consider friends. Because as it is right now, I do have lots of friends. I mean, you know, most of them would rather I forget their name, but um, I'm not gonna. It's all written down somewhere. I've learned a long time ago with a brain like mine. Now, many years ago, I've had 27 concussions, 27 documented concussions. And some people have told me, I think this is funny because some of them are friends that there's no way you've had 27 concussions. Other people know very well that I've had at least 27 because they've hung out with me enough. But there's a lot of people that are just like, I just can't picture that. I've never had one concussion, or I've had one concussion. How could you have had 27? And if you could have any snippet of a view of my life from like 5 minutes here, then 5 minutes in that future, and then 5 minutes in, you know, whatever, you'd be like, how have you only had 27? How are you alive? I could write a whole book that every page, maybe every chapter would be entitled, How Did He Live Through This? And then it would be the event in chapter 19, you know, and there'd be a whole bunch more than 19 chapters. And that would be the whole book. I mean, out of my head right now, which, like I said, the whole point of this little thing was it doesn't work very well. Out of my head right now, though, I can pick out literally dozens, and that's not an exaggeration. I've told myself millions of times, don't exaggerate. But yeah, dozens of times where I should have absolutely died. Not even close. It wasn't a close call. It wasn't a luck thing. You know, like I'm not, like I say, I'm not religious anymore. Grew up that way. You know, read the King James Bible that then was translated to NIV, whatever that means. And then I was able to read and understand it. I read that 5 times, cover to cover, by the time I was, I don't know, 20. And several times, but before I was 15, which got me going, like scratching my head and asking my dad, hey, how, he was all about it. Asking him rather, how come it contradicts itself so much? If it's a book of rules and stuff, and there's parables and all these other people's perspectives taken, and then they basically just, and this is the book of this guy's perspective, and this is the little writing of this guy's perspective, and this is the writing of, and then each of them, they say a lot of similar stuff, but in several places they contradict each other. Which sounded to me like it was put together by a schizophrenic. And so, Catholic Church. But I asked my dad that, and we had lots of discussions, and I think he was really, really just hoping and praying that I would turn out to be a good human being. And he wouldn't have to worry about visiting me in prison or whatever. Or, you know, having me live in his basement or something one day. That we'd be elderly in the same home at the same time. Anyway, yeah, so a long time ago, and then my work in the military, when I figured out what PSYOPs really was and how the military changes your, you know, it's kind of like brainwashing, how the military changes you from a normal human being into the kind that would run into a machine gun fire because that guy over there with 3 stripes in his arm said to, you know. I realized, wait a minute, these tactics that the military are using are the same things I saw in church. And then, of course, my church was all about hating on certain groups in my church was all about hating on the Catholic Church. And this is how they're trying to talk you into this and how that. And then people wanted me to go to, they were calling it youth group, but they were really having me go over to their house to talk with it would be a group of young, dumb kids, and all being talked to by an adult about the evils of the Jehovah's Witness church. Because they didn't want us to take our tithings, which is 10% of our income or something like that, away from the Baptist church and give it to the Jehovah's Witness church or the Catholic church or whatever. It's all about money in the end. And that's what I figured out. As soon as I realized whoever started it, whether it was the Church of England or whatever, the tactics, though, came from the same place because they ended up being identical. You know, first off, an indoctrination program. One group will point out, oh, they're indoctrinating you. They're trying to indoctrinate you. And then I'm like, wait a minute, but what you're saying they're saying is what you said. And then you go back and forth and you're like, oh, shit. They're both like that. You're right. I thanks for pointing that out. And then I'm very inquisitive naturally. And so I started looking for the right path. Once I realized I was on the wrong path, I started looking for the correct path. And then I stumbled upon a group that were pointing the finger at everybody and saying we all, including themselves, started at the same place, but they all got corrupted along the way. And then I'm like, okay, I'll read their book, which is freaking thick. So I have still to this day, not read all their book because it's hugely thick and it's very, very small print. A lot to say, and it's not all. There's no NIV involved in that entire. Nobody translated that one into NIV kind of a thing. So you got to work it out. It's a puzzle. But what I have found is that it's the exact same thing. Where that everybody that there was a list of rules basically that every single religious book I've ever read from the Middle East, from the Far East, Egyptian times even, stuff that way predates the Old Testament, the Quran, the Torah. It's all based on the same bullshit. It's designed to focus money and power for a select few. The money and power that comes from a big union of people. When some individual says, hey, listen, don't mess with me. You see these people behind me? That union out there, they're my group. You mess with me and I'm gonna tell them you're evil and that you should be destroyed. And so don't mess with me. So that's all that is. I've realized, and it's probably a human trait. It's part of our level of intellect. We're high enough up to where that we are beyond certain things, but we're not high enough up yet to realize that the stories we're making are just ridiculous. I guess I'm an agnostic, and if my definition for that word is correct, I believe there's something more going on than we can see. It's sort of like, there's people that are just so literal, they only want to believe something they've seen. In my time, in my age, as Missouri people, the show me state. If you show me, I can believe it. Where's, show me the money kind of a thing. And but I believe that there's invisible things, literally that we can't see, that are happening all around us, and that happened way before us, and continue to happen now, and happen way after us, and perhaps right next to us, but they're on a different wavelength, literally a different frequency, and because of it, we don't perceive them. I mean, I think that's entirely possible. I mean, my minuscule understanding of how the universe works. I understand fields of gravity. I understand magnetic fields. I understand sound, how it travels, how frequencies travel through the air, how radio waves travel through the air, how microwaves travel through the air, how gamma rays travel through the air. We can't see with our eyes any of them. everything that we can see is something that we have been adapted to understand, to be able to interact with. And there's a bunch of stuff that we don't need to know about. And so because of that, our ears and our eyes don't perceive them, because they're not essential for us to interact with, to survive. And but to say that they don't plain exist just because we can't see them is just stupid. We figured out a bunch of stuff, a ton of stuff that exist plenty. You know, I mean, obviously, radio waves. You know, anytime you ever turn on a radio and the station is in one city and you're in another city, clearly the radio waves are traveling through the air. Nobody can see them, but they're there. You know, if I'm talking to somebody on a cell phone and they're on the other side of the earth, and I'm talking to them in real time, you'd have to be nuts not to understand that there are invisible things that we just can't see, but they are just very real. And so then you have to stop with the ego and say, okay, well, that can't be all there is. You know, we don't know anything comparatively to what's actually out there, right? Our understanding of the world and how what it really exists in its entirety is a grain of sand on a really big beach, you know, really big beach. So that's my view of what religion thinks it knows versus what it knows. And I interact with AI all the time, having discussions about Edgar Cayce, and I've been an avid interester. You've been a very interested person in Edgar Cayce for decades. He's the only person that is a purported psychic that had almost all of his visions that are spoken aloud dedicated by a transcriptionist, and then maintained in a library that's dedicated just to him, you know, decades and decades and decades after his death, for all to study, you know, to look at, you know, recipes, you know, for medicine, basically using natural herbal stuff that has been repeated dozens and dozens of times, each one of them, and have found to have practically magical properties compared to, and still some of them don't really, current science doesn't really 100% understand. So the remote viewing and all that kind of stuff, there's a ton of technology there, all coming from something similar that to this day, in their day and age, they didn't understand. This is the early 1900s, and we've not figured it out since then. But some of his little visions did make some people extremely rich, until he cut those people off because he believed that wasn't right. He believed it was sinful, and he was a very, very, very religious person, come from just a gigantically religious area and family and all that. So he was under a lot of dual pressure, you know. But I made a video just before this one, and it was kind of in regard to a post I made on Facebook about how, and I think I entitled it something along the lines of "Under the Hammer." Steel starts out as iron, and carbon, which is, you know, basically powderized burnt wood kind of thing, is added to it, and it's hammered and it's folded and it's hammered and it's folded, and more carbon is added to it. It's hammered and it's folded, and it's hammered and it's folded. More carbon is hammered, folded, hammered, folded, and eventually other metals even get, you know, later in metallurgy, when they figure things out, gets added to it. And one thing that's constant, there's some additions here and there, you know, some smart additions, discoveries. But one thing that's constantly happening is abuse and stress and, you know, pummeling, constant hammering, constant folding, constant hammering, constant folding. This metal that starts out as really, really heavy but soft ends up being, you know, you can use much less of it and make it very light and have it still be strong. Steel, today's steel even. And I think that America that's a good analogy for America in our current state. When the country started out, the founders were breaking from a monarchy where that you were not allowed to practice certain religions, right? People were killed for their beliefs, So they wanted to go someplace where they could do whatever they wanted to, and so they did. And eventually, a movement happened to where that they're like, we're not gonna, they don't own us. There's an ocean between us. They want to come here and fight, fine, and they did. They went through that. Blood was spilt, lots of it, and we prevailed. And in that moment, we became Americans. When we said no, and then we fought and prevailed, not because we said no, not because we fought, but because we did all those things. We said, no, we're not going to do that. We don't believe in that. We stand for something different. Then we fought over it and we prevailed. Then suddenly we were America. And I don't care what people think about South America being America too, or that Canada is America too. I say America. I'm an American. During World War II or anytime, you go to Germany, and if you tell the Germans there that, yeah, I'm an American, they know exactly where you're from. Okay? This part of this continent. They don't think you're from Brazil. They don't think you're from Ottawa. If you say you're an American, you're American. If you say you're Canadian, then they might think you're from Ottawa. If you say you're Brazilian, then they think you're South American or Brazilian, right? But America, even though our country is named the United States of America, we are America. Okay, I'm an American. And when I took the oath at 17 years old for the Army, the word American was in there. When I learned, in that oath, I promised to die for that. And when I learned a credo that I had to repeat a zillion times, it's all brainwashing, but it's all indoctrination. And I had to say, I am an American fighting man. And they've changed it since then to I'm an American soldier or something like that, so that it's not the sexist or whatever. But once I learned that credo and I said it enough times, I believed it. And I was making a promise to the ether that that's me, and that is me. I was following in the footsteps of my father. I was following the footsteps of his father, and I was following in the footsteps of my mother. I was following in the footsteps of her father, though I hope I was doing a better job. And I was following the footsteps of my great grandparents, who participated in World War I. And my people came to America on both my mother's and father's side in the 1600s, and they participated in the Revolutionary War. Wherever anybody comes from, it is what it is. You're responsible for what you do. I'm very proud of my lineage. We've never been rich. We've never been powerful. I don't know of anybody in my family that's ever been important, beyond just being a person. But each individual has power. I have power. And part of my power is this channel right here. I reach out to people and I tell people what I think, and it's not always a joke. Sometimes it's serious, Like there's a ton of people that are listening to the things I say, and that maybe will then go from this channel to Facebook or something, and then follow me on Facebook. And on Facebook, I post a lot of writings and stuff that I do. Whereas I was on YouTube, I'm not a good speech writer or anything like that, or a speech reader. I could write, I can't deliver a speech. No way. It's all off the cuff because I just don't have that desire to try to memorize something I just wrote. But I write way better than I speak, and so and I can get out my thoughts more clearly and convey what I grew up hearing from my own father, who was actually a brilliant man. But more importantly than just being a brilliant man, he was a really good man, top quality human being. And everybody ought to think that about their fathers. But I was lucky enough to where that was the truth. Now my mother's father, not a good person, you know, and it's sad to think that, but I knew the man, and he just wasn't. And his father, though, was really cool, and I knew him too. And I just don't know how one man produced the other man. But, you know, everybody is not a carbon copy of their father. And I grew up with 5 kids in my family, and each one of us are different, you know. The worst insult, Ginger Billy, stop. Come on, get on her. My cat. The worst insult my brother Vern could get would be if somebody told him that he seemed like me. Poor guy. He's a college professor, you know, and PhD and all that stuff. He's a nice person, you know, but I think he enjoys being an intellectual more than I seem to be, you know, and so we are not all the same. My siblings and I, just like, you know, my grandfather was not a direct product of my great grandfather. You know, I mean, they were very, very different men, and my mother was not anywhere near being identical to my grandfather. But, you know, there are similarities between people and stuff, but that doesn't dictate who you are. And so even if somebody was brought into the world as, come on, stop. I have kids, and they're they're rude to each other mostly. But by the way, my kids, I have a little bit of time left. My 3 kids, in case you don't know, but I post pictures all the time, so you should know if you've ever seen this. I don't know. But Gracie is one of my cats. She's a calico. She has a personality all of her own. Frankie is the OG. He's like 16. He's a dark tabby. And then Ginger Billy, he's me as a cat. Except he's got a better personality than I do. He's never experienced anger in his life. And he's 2 years old. I have never met anybody besides him in my life, human or animal, that has never displayed anger ever in any way, shape, or form. Now, I've seen him scared. I've seen him disappointed. I've seen him, you know, bored and all that. I've just never seen him angry, even when he should be, you know, like when, I don't know what it is, but Gracie is paranoid and terrified of everything at all times, always has been since the day we got her. And if I take Ginger Billy to the vet and bring him back 2 hours later, she'll act like she's never seen him before. He is now an alien, and she has to hiss at him constantly. Oh, don't try to get anywhere near me, you know, because obviously it's clear that Ginger Billy's trying to kill her, you know, trying to make her into a pod person. And it takes like a week for her to forgive him for disappearing and being gone, or for having a different smell, you know. And then all of a sudden they can give each other baths, you know, they'll lay together on a pillow, whatever. But otherwise, and Ginger, but the whole time she's being mean to him, she's smacking his face, you know, whatever. And the whole time does he once ever hiss at somebody or be upset with them or retaliate or any of that stuff ever since we first got him when he was a brand new cat to the house. And Frankie and Gracie were treating him bad. Not once was he ever angry or defensive, even. Somebody would start smacking him in the face, he would just fall over. Like, okay, what are you gonna do now? And we play, and like play dead practically, not play dead, but like an animal does, but fall over. And he's like, well, now that I'm defenseless, you can just keep on beating on me, I guess. And of course, nobody does. That's just technical fighting. I'm gonna probably start trying that. If I'm attacked in the future, I'm just gonna fall over and play dead. I've never tried it before, but it's got to work. I mean, it lasts. It works too much in nature for it not to be real. Okay, I got 20 seconds left. So anyway, thanks very much for checking in my channel again. I'm still working it out. 57 years old. I have no idea when I'm going to be when I grow up. But it'll be something probably, I'm guessing. But I'm always having fun. Either way, I'm always having fun. I love you guys, and you guys should take it easy and forgive yourselves. See you later.